noble citizens, we must bypass a life of dormancy and vice to pursue the generative endeavor of a hard day's work. The benefits of these pursuits are not secured by chance or charity, but through the merit of your character and the firmness of your convictions. It is you who are planting the seeds of trees whose shade you know you shall never see.
All right.
Okay, boom. We're in. Hello. Welcome to the Broken Wind Podcast. It is your main super producer, the man himself, the main Vane, who has been very busy. Say hello to everybody.
That's me. Yeah, I've been busy. Yeah. Been out doing things. Can't explain too much, but if you're one of the subscribers to this show, there's a 50% chance that you were there and you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Well, and I do want to thank our subscribers for bearing with us too in these difficult times. It's mainly just professional obligations and minor technical difficulties that are always holding us back, and it's mostly just being busy people. So thank you for.
And a certain application that starts with a D, which I'm not going to name too specifically.
Well, yeah, some dumb-ass application for babies that we should really not be using.
Babies and nerds.
Anyway, yeah. So it's me, Butler, the other host, and we have a cornucopia of news to cover. Just a veritable wealth of options of things to talk about. Because I believe when we last spoke, Greta Thunberg was sailing into Gaza and had not quite been picked up by the Israelis yet. And there was also a lot more focus in the media about the protests against ICE, which are still ongoing, and still want to shout those people out, resisting ICE everywhere that they are. I actually just saw a little bit of coverage about a place in Florida, a church that sent an invoice over to the local sheriff's office for using their parking lot to organize their bullshit. So, shouts out to everyone resisting ICE still. But
yeah, it made Tom Homan's life a little bit more difficult, and that's something to be proud of.
Every single bit of making Tom Homan's life more difficult that can be done should be done. And there is a lot of other stuff that happened since then, so we're going to move through all that. And we're, of course, going to be talking the man himself, Zohran, Mr. Cardamom. I assume you listened to that song already, Finn, right? Did you?
No. I'm sorry, I didn't yet.
Zohran, it's okay.
Cardamom.
Zohran also has a musical career, if you're not aware.
I'm not aware of that.
Oh,
that's pretty cool.
My God, I am so excited to get to break this news to you.
Wow.
We might have to like pause the recording and listen to that together and then come back when we get to the Zohran part, because his music is sick, dude. You're gonna really like it. Like he's a cool dude. So
we talked about music a few weeks ago. Music is near and dear to all of our hearts. My heart as well.
I love music.
Yeah, we all love music. So
if you don't like music, I get like going through phases with it too. It's like it's not always what you're really into, but I think it's just a nice thing to always find some space for it in your daily life, even if it's something simple like a hip hop beat. That's good too. So I can't remember which happened first, but I want to get into our sort of like a little outline we put together here, and I know that the Minnesota shooter happened, I think.
Because that happened very shortly after our podcast, our last episode we did.
Right after.
So I think we wanted to mention that one off the top and make sure we at least send out our thoughts about that one. That's really horrific. And
it is really horrific.
And it's also been posed as left-wing violence. And we also saw that this was motivated by really right-wing extremism. One of the people who was attacked was instrumental with Tim Walz in passing one of the most progressive agendas in the country with a narrow one vote margin as well, which is a credit to Tim Walz's politicking and the people he surrounded himself with, and this hit really close to home for him.
Well, he did the classic Democrat thing of reaching across the aisle, and it worked out well for him in the context of Minnesota because of, you know, the political context of Minnesota. But I think one of the themes
honestly, not in a way that he's giving up anything. Like, he got student free school lunch. I believe they might have been the one that got like education funding for 400 years, like some major victories. So it wasn't just like Obamacare style bending over backwards to meet Republicans.
That's not what I'm saying.
It was actually reaching across the aisle and getting votes when he knew he could, which is strategic, like FDR style.
Strategic and smart.
Yeah, smart politics. Just good politics.
Yeah, smart politics,
Effective.
but still, like, unfortunately having to negotiate with people who are degrees away from absolute murderous psychopaths.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, like, just the reality of the Republican Party and has been for decades now.
Yeah, and you can't reason with people who are psychopaths. And a good example of that, did you see the Trump saying, like, why would I bother with talking to Walz after this?
Details that came out today about the suspect who's been charged there. Have you called the governor yet or been able to speak to any of them?
I don't really call him. He appointed this guy to a position. I think the governor of Minnesota is so whacked out. I'm not calling him. Why would I call him? I could call him and say, hi, how you doing? The guy doesn't have a clue. He's a mess. So, you know, I could be nice and call him, but why waste time?
I know, like, it's horrific, dude. It's horrific. But I want to say, like, a theme we're going to come back to a lot is the media being full of opportunistic liars. Because, like, you're right. The first thing that happened with this shooting, which was so insane, was that they hit this is a left-wing shooter, this is a communist shooter, this guy is a left-wing terrorist.
Right. Immediately.
Harder than they have ever hit it. Harder than I've ever seen them hit that button. And the reason that they hit that was because of exactly what you described. It was that Tim Walz had reached across the aisle and worked with this guy who seems to have been reasonable at some point in his life to help accomplish these things. And then at some point took the pill of whatever and went absolutely cuckoo bananas and murdered people. And murdered people in such a context that the cops were tripping over their own dicks to catch him because he had all of the tactical gear and, you know, signaling of someone who is a cop and therefore not someone they should murder. And it's crazy. Like, the accounts of what happened are, like, they make no sense to the point of you wondering, like, is there more going on here? Because it's like, they literally, like, walked into this guy. They walked up to this guy and they were like, hey, what's going on, pal? And he just looked forward ahead and didn't say anything. And he looked so much like a cop. They were like, I guess it's our fellow officer on duty. We'll leave.
There was speculation that the guy had to have high up connections either to the police or to the administration. And, I mean, we'll never really be able to answer that for sure. Not for a long, long time, unfortunately. But what we definitely know is that we're living under an environment very much like the strategy of tension in Italy.
Oh, absolutely.
Where the administration in power is purposely invoking these types of events, invoking the hysteria around them, and ultimately, nobody is able to really know or trust any sources because it's alienation from the top down, essentially.
Right, and one thing we do know pretty confidently is he was a like MAGA Republican. This guy was not. This guy was less of a leftist than like what was the guy who took those shots at Ryan Ruth? This guy was
exactly.
More
Yet
of
another one,
like right winger than Ryan Ruth. You know,
who was
like
also very right wing.
Yeah, like Ryan Ruth, not a leftist in any sense, just a like insane person who.
And it's all kind of it's the same as like the Oswald figure too, a person who's just so malleable, who's so lost essentially without a real purpose or direction or guiding ideology. And you just see throughout their life them drifting back and forth aimlessly between the extremes, and they're certainly estranged and alienated. That much is certain their entire lives. but they're not able to articulate it into a real revolutionary philosophy.
Right.
It's not socialism. It's not revolutionary communistic socialism.
No, it's just murder.
Maybe there's flirtation for moments, debatably, with Oswald. But yeah, it's like very much these are people who are just confused
murder.
And nationalistic. Yeah, wherever they go, they're nationalists. They're aimless.
Well, and this guy had been like a tactical, like priest in Africa or some insane shit. Who knows what it was like? His background was really like
legit or not? Yeah, or is that a CIA front or something? Who knows?
The more important thing I'm realizing as we talk about this more too is that like I hadn't really thought about this in the context of the tepid response of the Democrats to everything that's happened basically since then. But now that we're talking about this, it's like, I mean, you see the pictures of Tim Walz at the funerals, and it's like, of course, this has absolutely shaken the ground beneath the Minnesota Democrats' feet. You know what I mean? It's like whatever political consensus that, like this, if you're a active Minnesota Democrat who has been working alongside other Republicans, not unlike this guy, for years, think about the political climate that this probably has created. And it's like that has consequences throughout the party. And we'll get to the crooked New York Democrats later on, too. But
it's the same pattern that we're seeing. Of Democrats being totally feckless and unable to respond to the just absolute flood of propaganda coming from the right.
And they're afraid and willing to capitulate to right-wing terrorists too. And I'm not laying that at the feet of Tim Walz. That's more to do with the Israelis.
And it's the same as the pattern of the Cold War too, of the Democrats essentially just
World
constantly
War III, the original.
Yeah, the original World War III, and now arguably we're entering World War IV and a Cold War 2.0. Where I think ultimately you have this same sort of behavior, the self-policing on the quote-unquote left, which is drifting further and further to the right constantly out of this paranoid fear coming from the right wing that assumes, even in the 50s, the John Birch Society is assuming Ike Eisenhower is a secret commie. And this is the birth of the moon landing, tinfoil hat, QAnon, Pizzagate, conspiratorial thinking that is now just the status quo of the Republican Party.
Yes. Not even like we're going to really get the rubes riled up with this stuff sort of thing, as it truly was for your H.W. Bush types. It's like all the way to the top. They're all completely bought in. And I think that the next, I don't know if you have any other any other thoughts on the Minnesota shooting, but I mean, all thoughts and your feelings to those families that got hurt by this too. Like that, it does really suck. Like this is a really, like, every shooting is sad, but
it's sad that this is taken to be such a game for these people that lives become on the line. And that's part of the pattern of what Trumpism has done to this country. We'll just constantly go over this, the denialism of the reality, as we're going to go into the Iran discussion that follows. We're going to talk about just the total loss of that. We already had a solution. Now we're saying that after this attack on Iran, what we've done is stalled them for a few months, and that wasn't fucking good enough back when Obama negotiated the Iran nuclear agreement. And it's just this constant denial that what status quo politicians are doing is sufficient. And that's what happens when you're seeking out a loudmouth, ignorant motherfucker who doesn't know the first thing about one part of the policies he's discussing, not even one aspect of what he's talking about. It's just ridiculous. And yet that's the guy that you're going to make into your pallbearer for your entire politics.
And we're gonna get to the Iran war in a second. There's a couple more topics I want to cover first, but it's like I always think it should be said that like we're not really experts on anything here on this show. At the end of the day, like we're just guys with jobs and bills and bets and bullshit and cats. We love our cats, but like we lived through the Iraq War. Like that's a lot of it. Like truly and simply, like it's not that hard to understand this stuff in that context, and we'll make a lot of those comparisons later. But not soon after the Minnesota shooting, there were the parallel, and this is also something that had been built up to from those LA protests, was the No Kings protests that had been planned for months, meant as sort of like the, organized Democratic Party response.
Basically like Act Blue. The big pet project of like your Act Blue or Democrat establishment.
But there were a lot of organizations organizing within this too, and then like trying to build the momentum of it. I don't want to give zero credit to everyone who helped organize this. And then the funniest part too is that the Trump military birthday parade was happening at the same time, and that was the whole idea, I think, originally, with having those protests then. But the parade with all the tanks and our troops carrying drones through the air was an embarrassing dud. That was a real
it was really
American
an embarrassing display.
Century of humiliation sort of moment.
Like, the fact that people were concerned about that, it just created this big sigh of relief amongst people, I think, that day. And then to see at the same time... at the same time to see record-breaking turnout for the No King's Day protests, which were just amplified by his response to the LA protests, which had happened due to the ICE deportations earlier that week. And this is all part of the plan mentioned in Project 25 to basically heighten tensions within democratic cities by doing outrageous deportations, which we saw, like deportations from a graduation ceremony, like I think it was a middle school or high school graduation ceremony of ICE showing up and dragging students out.
It's disgusting.
Dude, absolutely horrific.
They're doing. It's sickening. It's absolutely fucking sickening.
Meant to strike the conscience of city people especially, and to drive them out into protests. And then the goal is to use that as a pretense to crack down and to cause martial law, essentially, in the country, which is where we left off last episode, last news update. So, this was all part of his plan.
Well, and America has this schizophrenic relationship with migrants. Like, there's this identity that is inherent to New York and a lot of the Northeast that I think is like one of the best parts about those places, that these are regions that are built by and for immigrants and immigration. These are places that are have always been a place that welcomed people coming here, even from the earliest indigenous people who they did genocide, and that's quite unresolved in all of this too. That's very important when discussing everything relating to Iran and Israel and colonialism. It's just a very important keystone in understanding this schizophrenic relationship overall. But we're now in this phase that's swinging back, where it's like this horrifying nativist, like they're literally revoking birthright citizenship. Like that's happening. Yep. Simultaneously too. So we'll talk a little more about that, because that's a developing
about the
story.
Supreme Court. And that developing. Yeah, but it all circles around one another, and all these things kind of are part of the same discussions that we're going to be having. As you talked about New York too, we're going to talk more about Zohran a little bit later. Yeah,
and the long and short of the No Kings versus the birthday parade is that the No Kings protests were hugely attended. They were massive protests, and people, like, they did get violent after dark, as these things are wont to do, but it was in a lot of places just a very largely attended lib style protests, and that's not necessarily a bad thing at all. And then
I think it's a good thing.
With the police, I think it's a really good thing to get that out.
Showing up. Because that ultimately, you can't rely on these Democratic politicians. I think that's part of what our message is going to be. And so what we can rely on in this moment, I think that was a great moment of the movement finding its footing and realizing if you can't rely on these politicians to turn out, you can still rely on a mass movement of people. You
have the numbers.
And you can embarrass
the numbers against these people.
That can embarrass the fuck out of Trump, because half the people turned out that he expected, which was only 200,000, and only 100,000 showed up. It was a pitiful display. The side-by-side display of dozens of cities exploding with people versus this one pathetic parade. And Trump warned these people that they'd be arrested, and they still turned out, even in D.C. There was no threat whatsoever. They couldn't possibly contain that threat of us coming out in the streets, and that's where these people are finding their footing in the mass movement of people. Essentially.
Yeah, you said it.
That's power.
You've been on this. You've been on this whole Trump is old as shit and dying thing, and I am not quite as certain on his mortality. But he's absolutely more of a daughter than he's ever been. He's more like incoherent in his posting style and overly verbose,
without
which
question.
He's
I mean, there's been the pictures of him with the stilts. There's been him falling down the stairs, which Biden was made fun of, the Air Force One stairs. He's had a lot of moments of incredible displays of weakness lately. And his hands also, they've shown... There's been close-ups of his hands that are all bloated and look like very poor circulation going on.
Well, this motherfucker is not to be underestimated still, too, because we're going to talk the last thing before we get into the war with Iran is the collaboration further between him and the fascist Floridians to create a prison in the Everglades for immigrants, which is very nightmarish to think about. But
horrific.
I've actually had this anecdote in the pocket for a while I've been meaning to bring up because I think it's actually endlessly fascinating. And you call this another teaser for the ever in production Florida series. It will happen, I promise. But there was one of the last one of the last governors of Florida during the Confederacy who was in very large part responsible for feeding the Confederacy during its, entire life, and then especially during those later years. Florida was the only place they had that was really productive for food. This motherfucker, because the Confederacy is losing and he's racist and shit, he kills himself. His son, obviously, doesn't appreciate that, but he stays loyal Confederate Floridian and eventually becomes one of the founders of the Border Patrol. And so you have 1 degree of separation.
You mean CBP?
Yes.
Oh, interesting.
The original Border Patrol, like the OG guys.
You mean the one and only Border Protection Agency and Customs Agency?
Yeah,
the one and only one that's necessary?
Right. The fact that
but these fucking Doge motherfuckers need to have 4 agencies to deal with government efficiency.
We couldn't cut any of the agencies that deal with, customs, immigration, process, DHS.
Yeah.
None of those. There's no cuts over there that you could find.
Yeah, no redundancies whatsoever between customs and border protection and immigrations and customs enforcement, right? No redundancy whatsoever.
Organizations we have doing the exact same thing are all totally lean, and there's no room for cuts on any of those. Yep.
Definitely not.
Flawless logic. I can't
Just like
see
we need a totally
there.
Unnecessary branch called Doge that wasn't passed by Congress, which serves the same exact function of efficiency that the Congressional Budget Office and the Government Accountability Office and the Parliamentarian and several other organizations all also serve.
Well, in the subject of colonialism, too, if you're bringing up Elon, it's like, talk about some unresolved colonial angst. It's like, what is this whole South African white genocide about, if not some unresolved guilt about your own ancestors' role in colonization. And it's like, dude, just, it's fine. Like, it's, like, you can just be a better person, and it's cool. Like, it's, you can't really do anything about it at the end of the day beyond what you can do yourself.
Yeah, that any amount of government intervention to deal with that is tantamount to genocide.
Yes, like, it's so what you've decided to do instead is the literal worst thing ever, and it makes you irredeemable at a certain point. And we talked too much about him last time, so watch out for Alligator Alcatraz. Hopefully
Alligator
we'll
Alcatraz.
People who really deserve to go in there someday, but there really is a horrible history of America shipping people south to do forced labor. That was a big part of the, Civil War era, was the nightmare of being a freed black person in the Northeast who could get kidnapped back to slavery. So
and then in Jim Crow, that was still protected through the 13th Amendment as punishment for crime to turn someone into a wage labor slave.
Right. Exactly. So with all that good stuff out of the way about the sort of domestic situation, maybe we start talking Iran?
Yeah.
Iran.
So
let's do it.
I think the best place to start probably is with Tulsi Gabbard, because so much of this hinged on Tulsi missing her fucking pivot. Basically, Donald Trump expects you to improvise like he does, and he is an expert, and he is a dancer. He's there to dance with Tulsi.
What are you saying, dude? Are you on drugs? What are you talking about?
I'm saying,
dude, I am so lost.
I'm saying there is this critical moment that Tulsi needed. About? Tulsi needed to land the lie with Trump, and she missed it. He was queuing her up. He was ready for her to take over as his protege, and she missed the landing. She misstepped. And instead of doing the lie that he wanted, Tulsi said that there was no evidence for the nukes in Iran, and that essentially set off this contradiction that spiraled throughout this whole display that we've seen.
When did she say that?
So this was when she said that there's no evidence of Iran nukes, which I can play the clip for.
How old is that, though? How old is that?
It was basically the first event that happened with this, because this was actually way back. It was, I think, in March that she said this, if I remember. And then he's asked basically about, Trump is asked about this statement from his national security director, who says that there are no nukes in Iran, and he's expecting her to pivot there, and she doesn't. She misses the pivot. And that's very important to Trump. If you're going to be on The Apprentice, you have to zig when he wants you to zig. You cannot zag when he's thinking that you're supposed to zig.
I feel like you're doing deep Apprentice Trump lore, and you may be onto something here. I don't doubt that
he's furious at Tulsi
Gabbard. I don't doubt Tulsi Gabbard can whiff in a critical situation. I don't doubt that at all.
Oh, she whiffed.
I don't doubt that. But I think it is important to get on the record that, like, even if I disagree with the idea that Israel really exerts any overly large amount of control over the U.S. in general and the military, industrial establishment, to the extent that Trump is the most malleable president ever, they did start this shit, and they started it very explicitly by just bombing Iran. It's one of those things that's like, you go back and look at it, and then they look at everything that got covered in it afterwards, and it just goes back to everything we said about the media is full of opportunistic liars that don't even that know it's their job not to really highlight the fact that this was a war that Israel just outright started, and you can claim that, like, Iran's proxies have been terrorizing Israel for yada yada yada, but it's like Israel is a terrorist state in the region. That's how it's understood and felt by its direct direct neighbors.
Right.
And Iran, whatever disagreements you may have with how that country is run, you probably don't really know that much about it if you've grown up and lived in the U.S. your whole life. And I think Operation Ajax and once again, the Cold War overthrow of Iran, one of the first events in the Cold War, something the U.S. denied till the early 2000s, cannot be, taken out of this conversation and then have an actual, honest conversation about what is the conflict here. And I find it fascinating, actually, that Israel and Iran were both essentially places where the decaying and atrophying colonial establishment of the British had to look to their Yankee cousins and say, hey, could you help us out here because we don't want our business interests to fall apart. And the Israeli story is a lot more, it's more complicated than that. I hate to throw that word out there, but that is more or less the story of Iran and Operation Ajax. That's how that went down. And that's the story of the Ayatollah being in control for however. So that's why I don't really feel, as an American, I have the right to really throw a lot of criticisms out there, regardless of what I might have to say about the morality police. It's like, that's not my place. That's the larger Muslim community can do that.
Yeah, definitely not. As far as the conflict between Israel and Iran, I wasn't really speaking on that, but I'm talking about our entrance as the United States into this broader conflict,
which is
and
crazy.
how similar it is to, as we've said before, to 2002, 2003, when we were getting back in the Iraq war. So, I think
it was, dude.
If we're going in order, here's Tulsi saying that Iran does not have nuclear weapons.
Tulsi fever.
No, it's important.
You have Tulsi fever.
It's important.
I can see it. Okay,
all
sure.
Right.
I guess
everybody loves Tulsi.
Everybody loves.
She's so good.
It's because you've seen her feet. That's what it is.
It's the
I know what's going on.
No, it's the white stripe in her hair that she does.
That's pretty cool. Well, she's also the national security advisor, right? Isn't that what it is? What's her role?
She's the director of national security, I think, now.
Director of national security,
and was had difficulty getting confirmed in that because her father is intelligence also, and she's had connections, I think, to a foreign country. It might be to Russia.
Yeah, she's in a weird,
super dubious,
weird, Indian cults. Yes, there's a weird Indian cult that she's connected to. I know it's not Indian. It's a Hindu cult. It's not Indian. It's Hindu. Excuse me.
But so here's. Oh, sorry. Yeah, you can
play her ass. What she gonna say?
Iran's cyber operations and capabilities also present a serious threat to U.S. networks and data. The IC continues to assess that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, and Supreme Leader Khamenei has not authorized the nuclear weapons program that he suspended in 2003. The IC continues to monitor closely if Tehran decides to reauthorize its nuclear weapons program. In the past year, we've seen an erosion of a decades-long taboo in Iran on discussing nuclear weapons in public, likely emboldening nuclear weapons advocates within Iran's decision-making apparatus. Iran's enriched uranium stockpile is at its highest levels and is unprecedented for a state without nuclear weapons.
Yeah, so...
Yeah, I don't know. I have a hard time with the Tulsi is important in all this thesis, no matter what her role is, because it's just such a keystone goal of the United States military for our entire fucking lives.
And for Trump's entire life, too, that he's wanted this war. We've got, evidence going back decades of him talking about invading Iran. We have him saying so many times that he thinks Obama would invade Iran to bring up his popularity. I don't know if you remember those tweets.
Our president will start a war with Iran because he has absolutely no ability to negotiate. He's weak and he's ineffective.
Well, I want to go tit for tat. I don't want to get too lost in the media side of this right now first, because I want to talk about kind of the material side of this war, because it's really interesting. I want to give shout out to Radio Warner. It's always an excellent program and worth subscribing to if you've never heard of it. This is such an interesting conflict because Iran just has a very different approach to war than the U.S. and Israel. And Israel goes and fires their ballistic missiles at Iran and does severe damage. Because Iran does not have any kind of Iron Dome interceptor missile system. They do have interceptor capabilities. I don't fully understand them, but I believe they do. But regardless, they go for a very tit-for-tat response, meaning like Israel blows up a hospital, they blow up a hospital. Israel blows up their military command, they blow up their military command. And there's no question that Israel did damage to Iran, particularly on the personnel side. They have filled in all those roles, they claim, and I think it's also really important to state in all of this that there's always incredible fog of war during these things because both sides have a very vested interest in controlling the information about the conflict. In particular, the Israeli operation to cover up the amount of damage they've been receiving in real time has been unreal to observe because there were periods where it was it felt like they were looping live feeds to make sure you couldn't see things happening. It was very strange. So I mention all this because of the Iron Dome and the THAAD interceptor missiles, which are very different from the missiles and drones that Iran builds. So to step back for a second, Iran is a very technologically sophisticated place, much more so than many of the other enemies the U.S. has ever set its sights on. And that goes for obviously the nuclear side of things, but that also goes for their technology, their drone and missile technologies, and that comes from their historical relationship with the Soviets and also their desire to defend themselves from Israel and from what they see as neo-colonial antagonism. And their goal has always been to be able to produce things cheaply because they don't have the largesse of an empire that the U.S. has. And so they've gotten very good at making very, accurate, dumb missiles that are cheap to produce, and the same for drones. Those drones have been fueling the Russian war effort in Ukraine because the lesson of the war on terror that the U.S. still seems to not have learned is that if your enemy uses a $100,000 weapon to blow up your $3 million weapon and no one dies in that process, and there's just a lot of metal and scrap being created, and you lost more money, you lose that exchange at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And that is, Osama bin Laden has written about this. It's known goals that the goal is to bankrupt the empire, and all these people crowing endlessly about the national debt, like we were just joking about with the border agencies. It's this is the problem. This is so evidently the problem. You have to be stupid to be missing it. And this military strategy demonstrates that exact weakness because the THAAD interceptor missiles I just discussed are very smart, very technologically advanced, very difficult to produce and expensive. And the U.S. spent close to $1 billion. The U.S. and Israel spent close to $1 billion in THAAD interceptor missiles throughout this 12-day war protecting Israel. The actual efficacy is very contentious, obviously. Like I said, fog of war. Israel does not want it to be common knowledge that these things have a 50% success rate. I think it's probably better than that. But the Iranians are also able to demonstrate their hypersonic missile capability, which compared to the way that the rest of the missiles move, from what you can see, it's no comparison. They're so much faster. And Iran got a lot of practice in how do we distract these expensive interceptor missiles and then actually deliver our desired payload. And it's hard to say if the Iranian capabilities are just being held back or if they're just boasting beyond what they're actually capable of. But it does not seem that anyone had a continued desire for war, and I don't think it would play out as cleanly as the U.S. or Israel would like. So yeah, that's the sort of detour I wanted to take to the technological things, because there's a lot of talk of air superiority over Tehran too. I think that's important to mention. It's in this environment where you're fighting an enemy that is their main weapon is cheaply produced and relatively accurate drones and missiles, and you're able to fly your big expensive jets over their country and risk getting those big expensive jets and the people in them shot down and killed. That's not the advantage it used to be. You know what I mean?
Right.
Does that make sense? So
yeah, definitely.
It's a very important dynamic to understand, I think, in this whole conflict, that even if it seems like Iran probably isn't in the best position, it's still not as bad a position as it might seem at all.
Yeah.
And they just do not want to escalate at the end of the day, and that has always been their goals. So
yeah, and I think in all of this, that we're going to find ultimately the bombing campaign on the nuclear sites was a total failure.
Yeah, the pictures you're oh my God.
We have to really discuss that, but I think
yes.
Now that you've talked a lot about Iran, which I think was great to just overview them and their technological capabilities, I think would be good to talk about how Trump got pulled into this conflict, into bombing the nuclear sites.
Should we talk the Tucker interview? Because I think that tension with the Israel, that was the real post 9/11 moment where it was Israel was starting this war with Iran. They clearly needed the U.S. to support them. There was clearly all the momentum to do it, but no one had admitted to it yet. And no one had said explicitly the U.S. is going to bomb Iran yet. I think that was last week, basically, that we are living through that, where that was when Tucker got Cruz on and roasted his ass on that very subject.
Yeah, and much like the lead up to the Iraq and Afghanistan war, we needed the media to create a pretense for that.
Right.
And that's why there was a post by Bill Kristol, one of the old neocons in the W. Bush administration, that said, BRB, starting up the project for a new American century again.
Oh, God. I had no idea.
And he wishes he was still in politics, basically because of how fast-tracked this all happened. And he could have only wished for that quick of a lead-up to the Iraq war, where it actually took months and months for the media to lay the groundwork for that war. As you're saying, it almost took a week for us to go from
nothing.
Yeah, for the public to go from being able to, and in this, I really want to point out how much MAGA was involved in this and saying, the slogan of Trump saying no more wars and all that stuff, which was nothing more than empty sloganing during his campaign. His first administration, he was a massive warmonger, and we knew he would be a warmonger. He
absolutely was. Yeah.
In this, we knew he would be even worse in the second administration. Yeah. It was obvious to anyone who was paying attention and wasn't in the cult of MAGA.
You needed only to observe the glee with which he assassinated Qasem Soleimani to understand that this man wanted to do this.
And that the people around him would apologize for the assassination of Soleimani, even though they'd always said, Trump's a peaceful dove all the time leading up to that. That, of course, he's going to have this cast of characters around him that are willing to completely lie us into a war at a pace that we hadn't even seen in the lead up to Iraq and Afghanistan. Really a blistering pace that I think would just be good for us to focus on probably for the remainder of this episode, other than maybe Zohran.
Yeah, we'll get to Zohran for sure, but it's just for all the shitheads that think they're Qasem Soleimani wasn't a great guy, or it's Iran,
it's the same as Saddam.
It's look, motherfuckers,
it took months for Saddam.
They're telling you these are going to be the biggest threat to your fucking life. And at the end of the day, you didn't know who fucking Qasem Soleimani was until he was killed by the country you are ostensibly voting for and paying for. So it's
two polls here, almost the same time, that show framing is everything. If you ask the country at large, YouGov asked, do you want America to be at war with Iran? 85% of the country said no, or the polls responders said no, while only 5% said yes. Then importantly, if you ask, do you approve or disapprove of the U.S. bombing nuclear sites in Iran, what's very important is that you see with Republicans only that the somewhat disapprove and strongly disapprove ends up increasing incredibly high amongst Republicans only, and amongst independents and Democrats still stays very much in line with that earlier poll of no, nobody wants to be involved with Iran. So all it takes is the simple excuse of saying Trump has now approved the bombing of nuclear sites in Iran, and virtually every single Republican, about 85% of them, drop in line in an instant. And that is the problem that we're talking about here. That they can say Trump doesn't support war, but if he changes his opinion tomorrow, they all support war instantly.
Yeah, and they're shitheads for that. But I also still believe in my heart of hearts that war is not popular in this country, and going to war with Iran will not be popular in this country just the same way that the war with Iraq was not popular in this country, and probably worse, because the war with Iran will go worse. And I want to go back to some of the material parts of Iran, too, that are really interesting, because I always think geography is so interesting to think about when you're talking about history and war, and Iran is a motherfucking plateau. It's hard to reach. You better have your air superiority because you're not invading it by land, you know? Like, you're not, you know what I mean? And there's there's 80 million people in there. It's a huge country. And they do not want to just give up what they have. And the other thing, too, is the Strait of Hormuz, which they haven't officially closed yet, but, and it's been theorized, too, that, like, it actually wouldn't affect the U.S. that much because we're probably not getting that much gas through the actual Strait of Hormuz at this point. We'll see, right? Like, let's find out. Iran, go for it, please. Yeah, there's no way that's a zero consequence.
It's bigger than, I believe, the Suez Canal and which other one combined? And 35% of the world's light natural gas goes through it. There's no way that it would not affect us.
Well, we haven't even talked about the global response yet, but we should talk about the big, because Tucker and Ted Cruz had this interview, and Tucker sucks. We're not handing it to him, but it was antagonistic journalism done well, and it was frustrating to see someone doing that and seeing that, like, these people can do this when they want to. But Ted Cruz got completely owned. It was very funny. He kept asking him basic facts about Iran, and he did not know them, which is kind of just
pretty funny
thing to do.
Like he was hilarious. Like, why would you want to? Awesome. Why would you invade a country when you don't know how many people live there? Because he asked him how many people live in Iran. Just some straight up gotcha journalism, but it's great.
Okay, so you topple the regime and by whatever means, what happens then? How many people live in Iran, by the way?
I don't know the population
at all.
No, I don't know the population.
You don't know the population of the country you seek to topple?
How many people live in Iran?
92 million.
Okay. Yeah.
How could you not know that?
I don't sit around memorizing population tables.
Well, it's kind of relevant because you're calling for the overthrow of the government.
Why is it relevant whether it's 90 million or 80 million or 100 million? Why is that relevant?
Because if you don't know anything about the country...
I didn't say I don't know anything about
Okay, what's the ethnic mix of Iran?
They are Persians and predominantly Shia. Okay.
It's not even... You don't know anything about Iran. So
okay, I am not the Tucker Carlson expert on Iran.
You're a senator who's calling for the overthrow of the government.
You're the one who
don't know anything about the country.
It's just... Ted Cruz is just the heel of American politics. It's really quite impressive to have had a career this long being so consistently humiliated. By
both sides. You know, even amongst the Republicans, always taking the boot.
Even in the Republicans, they're like, Ted's here. He's just like, dude, it's crazy. So, I don't know. Respect, even if he got totally owned. It was very funny.
Yeah, and I do want to talk about the stated reason for invading Iran versus the actual reason, which Trump admitted the actual reason is regime change. But the stated reason, much like Iraq, was to go in and stop them from getting these weapons of mass destruction. And ultimately, much like Iraq, but in a much shorter time frame, we've found that these weapons did not exist and that ultimately, even after bombing the site, now we're lied to by the administration about the extent of the damage, when actually it turns out that the bombing itself was a failure. But the thing is that if that makes Trump stop bombing Iran, then maybe what we all need to do is actually just pretend that he did such a great job that he finally stops doing this, because all of this is essentially just to inflate his ego at the end of the day and make him feel like he's done something, where I've already talked about the reality is the something that you want to do is deter Iran from getting a nuke for a given amount of time. You can't do it forever. It's impossible.
Yeah.
And this is what Donald Trump doesn't understand. So you negotiate terms like Obama did to prolong them from getting a bomb. And at the end of this, all they've told us after bombing the nuclear sites, which was really just a pretense for regime change, which Donald Trump admitted in his tweet. He said it's not politically correct to use the term regime change, but the current Iranian regime is unable to make Iran great again. Why wouldn't there be a regime change? MEGA, and then
so insane.
And so this is in contradiction with his own press secretary, with his own vice president Vance, who said that this is not going to be about regime change. It's not going to be a prolonged war like in Iraq, because we have a smart guy in office this time who knows better.
We don't want to achieve regime change. We want to achieve the end of the Iranian nuclear program, John. That's America's objective, and that's what the president has set us out to do. And the second thing is, Kristen, I certainly empathize with Americans who are exhausted after 25 years of foreign entanglements in the Middle East. I understand the concern, but the difference is that back then we had dumb presidents, and now we have a president who actually knows how to accomplish America's national security objectives.
Oh, my God. They were falling all over themselves during this period. It was a crazy 24, 48-hour period.
Right.
Of people just tripping all over each other, like getting the messaging wrong.
Exactly. And that's where I was saying Tulsi missed the pivot. She didn't understand that Donald Trump is going to talk about the nuclear weapons because he wants regime change. He's not going to say the thing he wants to do in public. He's going to say the thing that is a distraction, and he expects you to lie about that thing. And if you don't catch on, you're out. And that's what a big part of the feud that is emerging now between Trump and Tulsi, and it's going to become a bigger fraction, I think. We're already seeing that people in the media are saying, oh, they're trying to break up Tulsi and Trump. And the reason for it is ultimately this, that she didn't get the cue when she was supposed to. She didn't say the lie when Trump wanted her to. And so that blew his whole cover, and now they have to change the story. And that's been the whole last week, essentially. We've seen in just fast motion the continuous backpedaling of the stories for the explanation, when Trump already admitted the explanation is regime change in Iran. That's what he wants.
Yeah, I want to take the other side of that bet, because Tulsi looks good on camera, but I think there's a chance you'll be right. I really don't know. But more to the point, to our Iranian listeners, to anyone in Iran listening, tell your leaders, build that nuke. Build it, get that nuke done. Yeah. Don't stop, don't wait, get it done immediately, because
nuclear deterrence that's the crazy, is just a real thing.
Like the fallout of this is insane, and people have made so many comparisons to Trump's relationship with North Koreans. But like that's it. If in case it couldn't be any clearer to anyone else, it's like you don't have national sovereignty if you don't have a nuke, and so now that's where Iran is, and what happens specifically to get to that point. Because like I said, they dance around the fact that the U.S. is going to have to get involved, and everyone already knows exactly why and how, because it comes down to what is called a bunker buster bomb. It seems like one of the stronger bombs you can use that isn't a nuke. It's specifically made to get into deep underground, heavily fortified locations. And even with that said, they were going to need to drop a shitload of these on Iran to do this. And so over the weekend, they do. They wait till, markets are closed, I believe, and they go and drop those bunker busters. And how did that go, Vane? I saw the pictures you have found were awesome. You can just see that the location took zero damage. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, they made sure to include that old picture of Alex Jones with the before and after, where he looks exactly the same, but a little bit redder. And I think that's a pretty good comparison of what we saw in these sites. And of course,
they took no damage. It's
crazy. Of course, to the American public, this was sold to us through movies and Hollywood. And of course, Top Gun was the movie that they chose. They gave us a quote unquote expert who worked on the movie Top Gun as their advisor for their military advisor.
In case you needed any help understanding how much the U.S. has been salivating over doing exactly this for our entire lives is that they already had
they already made movies about it.
They already made a movie about literally doing this exact thing in high definition.
They're going to say that in this clip, that Top Gun is basically about what we're going to do to Iran's nuclear site.
Which is, to be clear, a nuclear international crime that if it goes well, if this went the way they wanted to, the Iranians would be dealing with the nuclear fallout of this for generations. Like,
and
that's
would be
something
a crime.
I think about every time. Yeah,
would be a crime.
Be a horrible, nightmarish thing to do.
Yeah, so what we're looking at here is we're being told this is, I think, anywhere from just shy of 200 to 300 feet in depth. There are all kind of reports out there of 1,000 foot, but I think that's more propaganda. So what you end up doing is if you saw the movie, the latest Top Gun movie, eerily enough, this is that plot kind of coming to fruition in real life. It's not just one bomb. It'll be a bomb after a bomb to get through that penetration.
And just lastly, that's what you're talking about. Can penetrate up to 200 feet below the surface. And then, of course, we'll see it try and put the second one in there and go down in there. Yeah. Let's bring in David Burke, our Top Gun and former Top Gun instructor, retired U.S. Marine Corps officer. Now, David, I don't know how well we did that, but you know this better than anybody. Talk to us about, questions over whether or not this can successfully be done.
Joey Jones just crushed that explanation. You guys hit the nail on the head. So really well done. This absolutely can be done. There is not a cave in the world deep enough to defend itself against the American military if it needs to hit it. And you described the weapon system and the aircraft and the mating of that exactly right. Now, this is a hard problem to solve, but it is absolutely a solvable problem with this system.
Trump has said it over and over that he would do this crime like on microphones constantly. He's just admitted that this is a crime. Just like he said, you have to take out the families of suspected terrorists that one time.
And the other thing is with the terrorists, you have to take out their families. When you get these terrorists, you have to take out their families.
He also said when Biden was advised that Israel should not attack Iran's nuclear sites, he responded and said, well, I think he got that one exactly wrong. Isn't that exactly what you're supposed to hit?
They asked him, what do you think about Iran? Would you hit Iran? And he goes, as long as they don't hit the nuclear stuff. That's the thing you want to hit, right? I said, I think he's got that one wrong. Isn't that what you're supposed to hit? I mean, it's the biggest risk we have.
We can't lose sight of the fact that these people would be overjoyed for the Iranian plateau to be blanketed in a fine coating of nuclear of like uranium, enriched uranium. That's what they would love that. They would be fine with that. The pro-peace
that would be great. Donald Trump has constantly said how much he would relish in the idea of bombing Iran's nuclear sites. And this is an international war crime, just like sending people to El Salvador in prison, just like all of these things that he relishes in doing are war crimes. And his fans seem to enjoy the fact that he's willing to do war crimes, which speaks to kind of the John Wayne mindset of reactionary Hollywood movie telling, that you need the only way to deal with something is not through the slow process of bureaucracy and international law, but what you need is a John Wayne type figure who goes outside of the law, like a cop who doesn't play by the rules. And that doesn't really work in the real world. And it goes to show that as the American mindset takes over and we become a nation of children, we are no longer able to effectively communicate with the rest of the world because we cannot meet the rest of the world on this childlike fantasy level, such as saying that Top Gun is going to be a model for how the world works. And
you need to have so many delusions already in place. And I want to say, too, that like the fact that they didn't get the uranium, that they didn't blow up their like most sensitive nuclear facilities means that this is not over despite this ceasefire we haven't even mentioned yet. But
and that poll that shows that Republicans would support bombing the nuclear sites. It's like, okay, then 85% of Republicans are okay with doing war crimes. And that is just their MO under Donald Trump at this point. That's the MAGA movement. You're all happy doing international war crimes, and you relish in it because you see Donald Trump as sort of a John Wayne type individualistic figure who can't be pinned down by society or by the deep state or the bureaucracy. Yeah. And ultimately, what you want is him to go outside the bounds of international law, and this is what you get. This is what you get.
Yeah, and it's going to come in the form of where's the uranium? Where's the Iranian uranium? Just get ready. Like they're gonna, that's going to be part of it. Is they're going to be like they still have that material because they want to destroy that. And like, okay, I'm all for denuclearization at the end of the day, but I'm going to need everyone to have a nuke first, especially Iran, because I don't want them to go into a prolonged war with the U.S. And I don't think that there's going to be denuclearization with bombing the facilities. Like I said, what they want is a nuclear incident. That's what they want to cause to cripple this country for generations. And it's a really monstrous thing to want. But we want to get into the good stuff now, the positive things that are happening. But one last thing we should mention too before we move on, this is a good transition, I guess, is the pathetic response from the Democrats in all of this, which has either been tepid non-resistance, or in the case of like your Jake Auchincloss or your Chuck Schumers and stuff, has been like, war with Iran is cool and brave, but we should be doing it the right way. Like making sure to preface everything with, under no circumstances can Iran have a nuclear program at all. That's not okay. Yeah. But he needs to talk to Congress first. It's so embarrassing. It fucking sucks. It means nothing to nobody.
Yeah, and of course the hero Al Green brought up an impeachment vote for the War Powers Act, and that vote was overwhelmingly voted against, including by many. Only 77 House Democrats voted for the bill, and 344 voted against Al Green's impeachment bill over failure to seek congressional authorization or proving that there is an imminent threat of war, which, as we've been talking about, the existence of this nuclear program is dubious, completely unfounded. The evidence that the attack was a success, also unfounded. And ultimately disproven by multiple sources, including CNN and New York Times, which they independently corroborated that the Pentagon came to them with the information that the operation was not a success and that the Iran nuclear program could continue uninterrupted. And ultimately, the administration said that this was a lie, even though what it actually was much like Tulsi Gabbard, them failing to contain one side of their narrative, aka the truth, and accidentally not intercepting their own information so that they have a contradiction form within their own administration's official record.
Oh my God!
And they continuously try to blame anyone else like the Democrats for that.
Yeah, they're so they're humiliating. They're awful, and we're gonna let's talk Zohran a little bit now. We are on an hour in, so why don't we sort of pause the episode and come back in? I want you to listen to the Zohran song right now.
All right.
Come on, man. Come on. So that's not great.
Isn't that great. Awesome? Yeah, that's so awesome.
It's sick. That guy's going to be the mayor. Okay, so
yeah, he's going to be the mayor of New York.
We're back in it. We're back in it. Yeah. So we just listened to Number One Spice by Young Cardamom. Seems to have been a part of some movie production, but it's a crazy little chapter in the story of Zohran Mamdani, the dark horse motherfucking candidate who in February was polling at less than 1% and is now the presumptive victor of the race for mayor in New York. So there's a lot of hurdles to cross still, but the way that this man has been able to consolidate and deliver a resounding electoral victory has been a really incredible story. So we're gonna cover that a little bit right now, sort of go through the whole thing. So
yeah, he's a big talent. Did you end up seeing him? Did you see him on Colbert Report?
Oh, I couldn't even watch this. This was, and I want to talk about... It
really is a good response, I think. I don't know if you...
dude, he's always great at it. Before we get to the post-victory interviews, I want to talk about the campaign and the debates in particular too, and Cuomo, because I think it's really important to tell the story of the campaign itself and like what this all was, what looked like, because it was crazy. So obviously Mayor Adams, crooked as shit, right? And there were people like fucking your Matt Iglesias and people like that, your Welcome Fest third way shitheads were saying that someone like Mayor Adams was the model for the new Democrat.
Right.
And then surprise, surprise, he's crooked as shit. That's not going to work. And he's not giving up on the race, but Andrew Cuomo decides that this is his time for a comeback because cancel culture is over.
Come back, baby.
And he is, of New York political royalty.
Any kind of allegations in this world.
And we've said on the show on past episodes, and I think it's a very important part of this conversation, that the New York Democratic Party is a special case. It is not like party politics in other parts of the country. The Democratic Party runs New York City. That's not a joke or exaggeration. They have for a very long time. There's like a historical basis for this. And the Republicans aren't completely, powerless in the state of New York. But when it comes to New York City politics and state politics, the Democrats are in a historically privileged position just because of the incumbency, basically. Yeah, it's really that simple. There's been times where Republicans had moments in New York, like your Michael Bloomberg, but in a case like this where the Republicans have total executive control and control of the judiciary, the idea that Republicanism was becoming popular in New York is not going to hold, even if the election results during the last election were surprisingly pro-Trump. It doesn't surprise me at all what we're seeing here after the way that New Yorkers have been terrorized by ICE and Mahmoud Khalil and things like that. So the Zohran campaign polling at 1% in February, and they take a really aggressive approach to listening to the community, getting to organized in the community, and also getting very, very shrewd, social media engagement. And he's just an incredibly charismatic,
young, charismatic guy.
He's a wildly good communicator.
33 years old.
And the other thing we should say about the race is, so Andrew Cuomo comes in, and he's the presumptive, just by name recognition, the presumptive victor. But there's also a lot of other candidates, and that's really, really important because Brad Lander, at some point, who is another progressive candidate and a Jewish man, decided to endorse Zohran Mamdani and work really closely with him throughout this campaign. Yeah. And that was a really beautiful thing. So, that, I think, is a very important part of how he was able to cross the finish line. But if you didn't catch any of those debates, this is the last thing I want to say about the campaign before we start talking about the victory and the responses to it. But if you didn't catch the fucking debates where Zohran put the spikes to Andrew Cuomo, you are missing out, because especially that's the debate where he's insisting he gets his name right.
To Mr. Cuomo, I have never had to resign in disgrace. I have never cut Medicaid. I have never stolen hundreds of millions of dollars from the MTA. I have never hounded the 13 women who credibly accused me of sexual harassment. I have never sued for their gynecological records, and I have never done those things because I am not you, Mr. Cuomo. And furthermore, the name is Mamdani, M-A-M-D-A-N-I. You should learn how to say it because we got to get it right.
Man, that shit was electric.
Yeah, that was great.
Was powerful, and an undersold part of this campaign that I think is really underappreciated is that Andrew Cuomo and Donald Trump are not dissimilar people at all. They're kind of like the same guy in a lot of ways. So the idea that this isn't exactly the kind of person that's called for in this moment is preposterous. And anyone saying otherwise is a piece of shit who doesn't even maybe understand their own deluded motives. But Zohran Mamdani will never run for president, unfortunately. But I wish him the best in his future political career.
Yeah, so I think that you set us up nicely for that moment I wanted to bring up on the Colbert Show, because Lander and Mamdani are both on, and they have a really nice moment, actually, that shows, I think, what New York politics can be in contradiction to Tel Aviv or Israel, essentially. Yeah. It's a good moment, I think.
Mr. Mamdani, same question. Does the state of Israel have the right to exist?
Yes, like all nations, I believe it has a right to exist and a responsibility also to uphold international law.
Okay, well, let's talk about the elephant in the room, is that there are many people in New York, even people who would support your candidacy otherwise, who don't want to support you because of the Jewish community's fear of the true and rising anti-Semitism, not only around the world, but in this country and shamefully in New York, which is the largest Jewish population of any city other than Tel Aviv in the whole world. And they are worried. They're very upset by some of the things that you've said in the past. And they are afraid that your mayorship would actually lead to increased anti-Semitism, that they believe that that would be more dangerous for them. What do you say to those New Yorkers who are afraid that you wouldn't be their mayor, that you wouldn't protect them?
You know, I know where that fear is coming from. It's a fear that is based upon the horrific attacks we've seen in Washington, D.C., in Boulder, Colorado. It's
all the way from Jews will not replace us to today.
And it's a fear that I hear also from New Yorkers themselves. You know, just a few days after the horrific war crime of October 7th, a friend of mine told me about how he went to his synagogue for Shabbat services, and he heard the door open behind him, and a tremor went up his spine as he turned around, not knowing who was there and what they meant for him. I spoke to a Jewish man in Williamsburg just months ago who told me that the door he left unlocked for decades is now one that he locks. And ultimately, this is because we're seeing a crisis of anti-Semitism. And that's why at the heart of my proposal for a Department of Community Safety is a commitment to increase funding for anti-hate crime programming by 800%. Because to your point, anti-Semitism is not simply something that we should talk about. It's something that we have to tackle. We have to make clear there's no room for it in this city, in this country, in this world.
And no justification for violence of any kind?
No, there is no room for violence in this city, in this country, in this world. And what I have found also from many New Yorkers is an ability to navigate disagreement. You know, I remember the words of Mayor Koch, who said, if you agree with me on 9 out of 12 issues, vote for me. 12 out of 12, see a psychiatrist. And I had an older Jewish woman come up to me at B'nai Jeshurun in a synagogue many months ago after a Democratic Club forum, and she whispered in my ear, I disagree with you on one issue. I'm pretty sure you know which one it is. And I agree with you on the others, and I'm going to be ranking you on my ballot. And I say this because I know there are many New Yorkers with whom I have a disagreement about the Israeli government's policies. And also, there are many who understand that that's a disagreement still rooted in shared humanity. Because the conclusions I've come to, they are the conclusions of Israeli historians like Amos Goldberg. They are echoing the words of an Israeli Prime Minister, Ehud Olmert, who said just recently, what we are doing in Gaza is a war of devastation. It is cruel, it is indiscriminate, it is limitless, it is criminal killing of civilians. These are the conclusions I've come to.
Stephen, can I? Sure, please.
Here's Lander.
So, look, I'm a proud Jewish New Yorker, raising 2 Jewish kids here is the joy of my life. I'm the highest-ranking Jewish elected official in New York City government. I'm nervous about rising anti-Semitism, and also I believe in the humanity and the human rights of Palestinians, and I know that it is possible. I support that vision of Israel as a Jewish and democratic state, but I hate what the Netanyahu government is doing in Gaza. And I've been saying that a long time. And look, no mayor is going to be responsible for what happens in the Middle East, but there is something quite remarkable about a Jew.
Yeah, I got to give that guy
coming together to say, here's how we protect all New Yorkers, Jewish New Yorkers and Muslim New Yorkers are not going to be divided from each other. We build a city where you have affordable housing and good schools and safe neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Oh, I get choked up listening to him. What a sweet guy. It really
it's like,
is.
That is socialism.
Bless his heart. Yeah. Like, that guy is really cool.
And that is what the original project of Israel could have been. It could have been a multi-ethnic community that provided housing and health care for everybody, and it chose not to do that. And that's untenable in the long run.
We have our disagreements with him about Israel and why it is the way it is. But I think that, and I missed some of that clip too, I'll be honest, but the thing I want to say, because I've heard him respond to those questions many times, is that he gives almost the same response every time. And it's really, really powerful. Some of it's just personal anecdotes, but one of the things he makes sure to say is that I believe in Israel's right to exist as a state with equal rights, a democratic state with equal rights.
Yes.
And that is such an important thing to say, because they do this with Globalize the Intifada too, where he acts like he's dodging a question or avoiding answering something, when you can hear him answer the same fucking question the same fucking way over and over again. So any credible listener hears that and is like, okay, how is he avoiding this question? He's literally giving the exact same answer he did to the last person who asked him this question. And it makes sense to me that, Israel should be a democratic state with equal rights. What else should it be? What are you implying it should be? It forces the opponent to have to explain, I think Israel should be an ethno-state. I think Israel should be a religious apartheid. And most people hear that and think, oh, I disagree with that. So they can't make that case. And so they tell him he's dodging the fucking question because he's not giving them the answer that they fucking want. It's infuriating. Right. I didn't hear his whole answer with Globalize the Intifada, but I know it's centered around the idea that, like, translation is an important part of this. And the idea that intifada is this scary Muslim word that actually just means struggle is totally understandable. That it's like the idea is that we're trying to globalize our struggle because we can't just keep it local, and it's not working that way. Like that's understandable, and I think has borne fruit. So we support globalizing the Intifada on this show, and we don't think Israel has the right to exist as an ethno-state. So I'll say that. Yeah,
and so Zohran's really scared Republicans and the establishment Democrats. It really feels like a moment similar to Upton Sinclair when Hollywood brought out all of its fangs against Upton Sinclair in California to make sure he couldn't win a local election. And it started with, after Mamdani was announced the winner, Donald Trump made a tweet saying he's 100% communist lunatic and that he looks terrible. His voice is grating. He's not very smart. He's got AOC +3, dummies all backing him. And even our great Palestinian senator, crying Chuck Schumer, is groveling over him. Yes, this is a big moment in the history of our country. And that's really a pretty egregious what he said about Chuck Schumer being a Palestinian.
Dude, I read this. I read this and I thought to myself, like, he really has finally lost it, because, like, this is, I feel like Trump, even a couple years ago, would have known that this is basically just an endorsement. Like, this is like you're making it's a classic case of Republicans making people sound cooler than they are. Yeah. But the problem is also that Zohran is that cool. So it's like he's not a 100% communist lunatic, but I wish he was. So it's crazy. So
yeah, but he is a model for moving forward for the Democratic Party. Yeah. That's a good as he said himself, a referendum, I think, on the Democratic Party and what they need to do to be more responsive. Mm-hmm. And here I have a good video of Fox News, great example of that, doing basically advertising for him, just like we saw with Bernie Sanders when they put up all these things that were supposed to be scary socialism. And it actually turns out to be great advertisement for him and may have helped carry him over.
Right.
How can someone vote for this? He's a snake oil salesman.
How can someone vote for this? Freeze the rent, city-run grocery stores, social workers to replace police.
Chiron.
$70 billion of debt relief to fund
free
affordable
buses,
housing,
no-cost
free buses,
childcare.
no-cost childcare, baby baskets to newborns, $30 minimum wage.
Pause it. Yeah. Well, and I want to, I think we should talk a little more. We should dissect the response a little bit more from both the Democrats and the Republicans. Because one particularly disgusting response has been from that guy, Ogles, saying that they should, he emailed Pam Bondi to be like, can we deport this guy I'm scared of in
absolutely
New York?
Horrific. They're calling for his denaturalization and deportation.
Disgusting.
So that's where this rhetoric has gotten us to of Donald Trump and the disgusting denial of reality when you have Obama, the deporter in chief, and Biden deporting millions of immigrants, and you still deny that reality and say, nope, actually, even though Trump deported fewer, I disagree. I only agree with the reality as proposed by Trump. And here we are. This is the reality that you set us up for. Another disgusting one is calls to use the 1954 Communist Control Act. Here we have Right Angle News Network. Some Republican voters are now calling on President Trump to use the Communist Control Act of 1954 to stop Mamdani from becoming mayor of New York, while others argue over the constitutionality of such a move. So they'll just say they'll just say you can't have a socialist be the mayor of New York, even if people elected him. We're just saying no.
Without getting into too deep into the disgusting comments from, I think it was Kristen Gillibrand, it's like there has been an unending stream of similarly racist bullshit.
Yeah, from Cuomo, being like, Kristen Gillibrand, Dave Rubin, and Jim
it's keep
Cramer.
From both sides of the aisle.
All sides, of our politics.
My thing is that, like, I really think Zohran is an incredibly talented and charismatic politician. I think he can win this race. I think he can become the mayor of New York. I think that can be a poison pill if he is not careful. And quite frankly, my biggest thing, something I've said before, is that the Democratic Party needs to be abandoned as a vehicle. It's a necessary one to take in this instance, and I don't think they've done anything wrong at all. I have zero criticism at all for the direction of their campaign, and I wish them all the best in the general. I think they can win that too, but I think they need to keep their eye on building a movement that is outside of the Democratic Party and able to supplant the Democratic Party where and when necessary, because these people will stab him in the back so fucking fast. And he does not even, like I said before, I think he's the perfect person for that job, because he does not have the option to essentially run for president, because that weird nativist element that you have to be born in the U.S. to be president. So he is exactly the kind of figure to build a party that can
at the local
support
level
actually defeating the f***ing Democrats and actually threatening,
which is the building block, because everybody only wants to look for the next president, but we are going to need to find these people who are the building blocks of our future society at the local level. Yeah. That's incredibly important
do the work
to have a model.
Outside of like getting the big job. Exactly.
Yeah.
And just looking at the way that the Democratic apparatus coalesced around Andrew Cuomo and then ate shit should show you that there is potential here. Like this is not something that people believe. People want people who are authentic, and they don't care if they disagree with them. And that's really pretty true about Americans everywhere. They're weird, asynchronous, internally contradictory, argumentative people who do not trust anyone that they think is just trying to tell them what they want to hear, because that's all they deal with constantly in their daily lives.
The absolute worst thing you can be seen to do to an American is to walk back something that you said, to take back a belief that you claimed you said you had. Americans will notice contradiction in your statements. They will notice hypocrisy or flip-flopping amongst politicians. That's the one thing Americans are keen to notice, I think, even if they are not as educated, say, in history or political philosophy as, say, other parts of the world might be. Americans will notice that.
No one is impressed by your campaign's ability to navigate to the political center, Elise Slotkin. It just looks like you're less credible to both sides of an actual political struggle between people who want a better life and people who have a bunch of shit and do not want to pay more for people who they think are less deserving. Like, it's pretty much that fucking simple.
And willing to make deals even with the other side, just like the dough faces of the of New England, who were willing to
call them that on Blue Sky
reach across the aisle.
I literally all the time, dude. Reps from Massachusetts, it's a good time.
And it's like, that's coming from a position of comfort that you say you can do that, whereas there's millions of people who don't have the comfort of being able to say that that's a good enough compromise for them.
Right. Yeah, the Elise I won't get too deep into it, but I was listening to Elise Slotkin's proposal for how to make life more affordable for Americans, and it really came down to we need to deregulate builders so that they can build more inventory.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry.
Allow
if you're
more
insane,
subletting of your garage so that you can have an additional rental property inside of your house. That's her solution.
Not to get too granular, but it's like there's actually a shitload of inventory in a lot of the U.S. right now. I don't think that's just true where she is. There's a lot of places where housing is very, very unaffordable and still is. The problem is not inventory. The problem is pricing and people being able to afford those things. And it's like, it's just that simple.
Yeah, a neoliberal solution is like undoing the zoning restrictions so we can have 12 people move back into an apartment. Great. That's abundance mindset for you.
Yeah, we have an abundance of roommates. That's abundance agenda.
There's so much potential growth, though. Think of the upside.
Abundance of roommates. Nice. All right. Well, we plan to talk about the very bad Supreme Court ruling. I mean, all the lawyers on the internet seem really freaked out about it. It definitely seems bad. I always have a hard time getting worked up when people tell me that the Constitution is finally over, because it's like, I don't know. What about like the past, what about everything that's happened since the year 2000? And like, you can point to constitutional contradiction.
A slow recession of the Constitution.
An incoherent and useless document, and I wish to be done with it. And that's that's something you can build a party around that people might get interested. I don't know, but that's me. That's just maybe that's a little much. But do you have any closing thoughts for our listeners here, friend?
I think I got a good moment to end it on that was very hopeful. I feel like when Bernie, at a Bernie rally, he first finds out about the bombing of Iran, and you hear a genuine protest for no more war, or a genuine chant for that. And I felt optimistic after that, and I think that relates to what we had said about the mass movement of the people finding its feet in moments like the No Kings protest. And more of this is going to happen, that even if you don't have a voice from any of these cowardly politicians, that the movement itself of the people has its own voice and will come out in the authentic, organic moments like that, just shouting no more war when they all find out that we bombed Iran's nuclear site.
Yeah. I mean, we don't even need to play the clip, because I saw it and I know it and it's good. And I agree with you, because it's like the post 2000, like the post Iraq war attitude, people realizing that like this benefits us in no way. It's nightmarish for everyone. There is that, people have not forgotten that, and that will rear its ugly head for the fucking MAGA movement. And the saddest part of that clip too is the way that Bernie, just in the Democrat style, immediately diverts it to like some kind of like disagreement on the process of it, when it's like, I'm not saying Bernie's in favor of that war, but it's like, we need to be more muscular than that.
Yeah, like, harness that anger, that energy that the people have, and don't
the
try to.
On the process is meaningful, but it's not meaningful right then.
Yeah, like, don't tamper that anger down, heighten it, and ride that movement and that organic anger that people have, because that is what this era that people keep reminding us that we're in a populist era. That's what they mean. And Donald Trump ran that on a lie, telling people he was not in favor of war. And it's undeniable. This past couple weeks has been the biggest referendum, in a lot of ways has been really relieving to finally see these people pivot once again back to a pro-war stance, just to show the cycle is completely finished. They have gone all the way back around to being pro-war from when they started riding this anti-war fervor that originally emerged in the wake of George W. Bush. They're right there, ready to bow down to authority in less than a week, ready to go to war with Iran, which is 4 times larger than either of these countries.
And just like the neocons before them, their popularity will fucking implode. So we can look forward to that. Shouts out to Zohran and his team. We wish them all the best in building an alternative to the Democrats. And I think that's a good place to sign off. What do you think?
Agreed. Yeah. And I'll trail it out with the.
Again, thank you for listening, folks. If you've stayed this long with with number one spice, put some Mr.
Yeah, put some number one spice. No, I think I'll end it with the No More Wars chants.
Hell yeah.
You'll hear it in the edit.
If you've listened this far, thank you so much. Subscribe to the Patreon if you're not and you're able to. And to anyone who is subscribed already, thank you for your continued patronage. We will continue to keep cooking on as many episodes as we can. And hope to hear you folks again soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
This is a statement from Donald Trump, quote, "We have completed our very successful attack on the 3 nuclear sites in Iran," etc.